Welcome to Plug and Pay, a talk show where we talk with smart payroll professionals from all around the world about interesting, thought-provoking topics that are shaping the global payroll industry. My name is Mark Oliver Fiedler. I'm the CEO and founder of Payzar, and I'm the host of the show. We release new episodes every couple weeks, and you can find them on YouTube, on LinkedIn, as well as on all of the major podcast sites. Today, I'm super excited to have Gerard Hall with us. You can also see we're in a little bit of a different setting. We're actually in Las Vegas. Vegas, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the big annual APA GPMI payroll conference that's going on here this week. So Gerard, you're here for that. I'm here for that. Exciting times for anyone working in payroll.
Very much so.
Get back together for the first time actually in a couple of years after the pandemic. So thanks for making the time to come on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm also personally excited. This is the first time actually doing this in person with someone. So far, we've only managed to do this sort of virtually through Zoom.
Okay.
So this is a different format for us. It feels nice to actually...
Setting a new standard.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. This is new times, good times. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know a lot of people already know you. You are That Payroll Guy,
Yes.
Which you're known for on social media.
Absolutely.
And but maybe just to give people a bit of context of how you've become That Payroll Guy and your background.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in payroll almost 2 decades. Started when I was 2, right? We're going to believe that.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
But I actually got started in payroll working for my church back home. And that really excited me because of 2 reasons. Number one, I got to kind of know what people made. And then I got to utilize my math skills, which, I love math and I love numbers. And so that's really what kind of started me getting excited about the payroll industry. I then went off to college, go Hokies, Virginia Tech, and actually worked as a supervisor for the hotel on campus where I helped with the payroll there as well. And then after I graduated, I ended up getting the job that I have today, working at CBiz, processing payroll, doing benefits. And I've had so many different positions, but they all tie back to payroll. Mm-hmm. Working with the APA, starting at the local level, speaking at the local level. Then I started working with the Virginia Statewide Payroll Conference, teaching and being on the committee, several committees there. Then with the statewide, there's a lot of people who sit on the board with the American Payroll Association. Mm-hmm. And so they were just like, you should actually look into being a part of the American Payroll Association. I'm like, well, I'm already a member. They're like, no, actually being involved. And I said, okay. So I've done that for a number of years. And most recently, probably since the last 4 or 5 years, I've noticed that there's a lot of people who are asking payroll-related questions who are in the payroll space. And I was able to answer a lot of questions. I was just like, this is pretty cool. And people were like, getting in my inbox, like, hey, I saw you answer so many different questions. So I really, can you answer this scenario? What do I do in this situation? And so I decided, let me create a little moniker, a little tagline. Mm-hmm. And so that's where That Payroll Guy actually was formed. Mm-hmm. And, it's been going strong. I'm seeing a lot of people here at the APA conference this week. There are people who are just staring like, you're that payroll guy.
You're that guy.
And I'm just like, I'm an extrovert through and through, but it's just so we're like, oh my God, I follow you. You've answered so many of my questions. And so that's really kind of how I got into the space.
Yeah, become a celebrity in the payroll space. Yeah, truly.
I don't know about celebrity, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you started off by just answering people's questions. Has kind of the goals that you're pursuing with That Payroll Guy, has that evolved since you first stared?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just started, created an LLC. It was not making a whole lot of money, but just to a place to have an established business. But now, I'm at a place where I'm doing education classes, I'm doing consulting. People can go to my website and actually book a consultant. And it's really working out well. So it definitely has evolved. Mm-hmm. Quite a bit, which I'm very happy to see, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Now, I've seen that in your communication, you're communicating obviously with and to payroll professionals, but you're going beyond just talking to payroll professionals. You're really evangelizing the role of payroll, the payroll profession, to a much broader audience.
No,
so I'm curious to hear your perspective on, you know, the payroll profession's perception. How do you see that changing? Has it already changed? And what can we all do working in the payroll profession to help, you know, sort of promote and evolve the reputation, the recognition?
Absolutely. So as to your point, you know, it started working with payroll professionals and starting to realize that I'm now becoming a voice, you know, if kind of an advocate for payroll. And like you said, transcending beyond just the payroll professional. It's like people are, you know, sharing my post and saying, hey, look at this, you know. And so it's like, all right, let me, you know, create a space, because, you know, the thing that I've noticed is that payroll is the most needed but underappreciated role in a lot of different businesses. And it's unfortunate to see a lot of my counterparts who work very hard, have been in the industry 30 and 40 years, not feel they are getting the respect from a monetary perspective or just an appreciation perspective. Usually in the payroll world, it's, hey, this is what we're going to do. We didn't bring you into the meeting to talk about it. You got to figure it out. It's like, okay, well, they're the ones responsible for making sure everybody who comes to work gets paid. And so I feel like to your point, the pandemic has really helped a lot, because prior to the pandemic, if you talk to a payroll professional prior to the pandemic, they tell you there's no way you can do payroll from home. Like, how do you have to be in the office? You got to print a check, you know? Well, the pandemic showed us that is actually possible to be remote. And it's really changed the game to where, you know, there are some companies who are trying to get their people to come back, and they're like, I'm just going to go find a role that's going to let me be remote, because we did it just fine for 2 years. And so I think on top of that, and really getting the appreciation for pay, because unfortunately, some companies look at it as just a support department. And while payroll doesn't necessarily generate revenue, and that's how some businesses really look at making salaries, they have to understand there's a lot of regulations that go into payroll. It's not just pushing a button. And that's really what I've been trying to do, is just show not just payroll professionals, because of course they know they do the work all day, but their bosses and just the working class in general, that payroll there's a lot involved to it, and it needs to be appreciated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree with you that the pandemic, I think, has, with all the sort of downsides that it's brought for the payroll profession, it's really elevated the importance, right, of the payroll profession, because you can downsize and sort of put on hold a lot of activities within the organization, right? You can stop selling, you can stop your production, which a lot of companies had to do. But even when you put your people on furlough, you still need the payroll department, right, to figure out how do you furlough people. So, and I think it's been amazing. Obviously, we've all seen that the payroll professionals all around the world have stepped up, have gotten the job done, as they always do. You know, even when they had to work remotely, even when they had to figure out new regulations that were introduced at a crazy pace over the last few years. But yeah, I think we're seeing that in a lot of organizations. The recognition and the support that payroll is now getting from the senior levels has definitely changed. At the same time, I would say payroll professionals, we probably would, you know, all agree that payroll professionals in many places are still the unsung heroes of the organization, right? They make sure that everything works and everyone gets paid without being put on that pedestal or getting a lot of the limelight. In fact, in our motto, we like to say, I work in payroll, what are your superpowers?
Right.
This is our little, here, I'll give you actually the booklet, which we're giving away at the conference. But I'm curious, what's your perspective, talking kind of about, you know, the superhero image of, you know, payroll professionals, which I firmly believe, you know, payroll professionals are unsung superheroes. what are the superpowers that payroll professionals bring to the table?
That's funny you asked me that question because I actually just did for a statewide conference last month. Their conference title was called Payroll Superheroes, and my general topic was mentioning the strengths and superpowers that payroll professionals have. And so I'll draw on that a little bit. And so if you look at a superhero, every superhero had a day job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they weren't just fighting crime 24/7. They you know. Batman was he was a CEO business executive, you know, Peter Parker, he was the reporter.
Journalist,
and so everybody always had something. And the good thing about the payroll profession is the day job is where the payroll professional becomes the superhero. Because again, while they're processing payroll, or as some people say, oh, just pushing the button and get people paid, it's a lot more to that. Because they first off have to connect with HR. They work with IT if you have an in-house system. And even if you have a third-party provider, you know, you still need IT and all of that. You're working with your legal department because every time Congress decides to change something or a state decides to make an amendment, we've got to make sure we're still in compliance. And you would think with COVID, you would think that would have stopped some of the progress of or processing of state legislation, but it's actually gotten more increased. So you've got to stay on your A game. And so being able to do all of that, in addition to making sure that people get paid timely, that in and of itself is a superpower. So you've got to have solid time management. You've got to have, you know, be able to handle multiple tasks at a time, because you can't say, hey, well, I've got 37 things going on, so instead of getting paid Friday, you'll get paid on Tuesday. I don't think that's going to ever work.
Yeah, not going to fly so well.
So within all of that, you've got to be able to take those powers. And the biggest part is just being able to keep that cool and keep that peace, because payroll is such a high stress, and it's not for the faint of heart, you know. So if you've got to be able to maintain or manage that stress, because you can take that home and then now you've affected your personal life as well. And so, you know, to your question of superpowers, it's just mainly doing the job, getting it done well, and being able to kind of keep cool about it. That's really the superpowers that's really needed.
Well said. Yeah. It's a high stress job, right?
Absolutely.
And so multidimensional, as you mentioned, you know, working the numbers, working the legislation, dealing with the employees, right? It takes a lot of different skills to bring it all together and do it well.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm curious in terms of, you know, one of the things I've heard you talk about is, you know, the payroll profession is something where most people don't wake up one day or, you know, go to college and say, listen, I really want to work in payroll. And I hear this all the time as well. You know, people say, well, it's sort of stumbled into payroll. I ended up there. And I know you know a lot of payroll professionals. You're a payroll professional yourself. Why do you think that is? Why do people end up in payroll not by sort of destination or really choosing it strategically or kind of as a profession, but slide into it more?
Absolutely. So I think there's a number of reasons behind that. I think the main two reasons are, number one, just like we've mentioned before, just the appreciation for payroll, and just, you know, some people thinking, oh, it's just a support department, we'll just get anybody. Well, you gotta need somebody who's got the mindset and the eyes for payroll. But I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, not even past high school. Like, you know, when you think of finance from a consumer level, you usually think of somebody who is either talking about budgeting, stocks, or tax returns. Nobody ever thinks of, you know, payroll from the consumer level, like understanding your paycheck, knowing what those taxes are, and being able to calculate those. So I think just the lack of eyes on it creates that void of people being interested. I think also when you look at post-secondary, especially within the United States, there's a lot of you might go through, even in an accounting course, you might have like a payroll accounting subsection of one course. So you're really not on a Like I've never seen a major of somebody majoring in payroll accounting,
Yeah.
you know? And so for that reason, when people major in accounting, they automatically think, especially when you go to college, well, I got to be a CPA.
Right.
Nobody ever takes the track of saying, you know what, let me get into payroll.
Deep into payroll.
So
yeah.
I think for just the lack of sight on payroll, the appreciation of it, that
Yeah.
creates the void. And sadly, I think that's going to be a huge issue. And we've seen a little bit of it now already with COVID,
Yep.
especially with a lot of our senior people who were either already past retirement and were just continuing to work and just deciding, you know what, this is just too much for me.
Right.
Or leaving and we're not backfilling.
Yeah.
So the issue is, well, a lot of knowledge is now going out the door because they're retiring. Because they're at retirement age or decided to retire early or just decided to get out of the profession altogether. And so, you know, to your point, it's really going to be needed. And we need to create some education and some more, not just appreciation, but just some focus on it to realize this is a solid industry in which you can make a really decent living and have good, pure enjoyment in what you do. So that we can maintain that knowledge that we have today.
That was going to be actually my next question is what can we, people working in the industry, do in order to, you know, promote the profession more and get young people to see that as a career path? Because one of the things that strikes me when I talk with payroll professionals is people are incredibly passionate about what they do.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I haven't met a payroll professional that says, I'm sort of, you know, calling it in. You know, people are like really, really committed. They love what they're doing. You know, they bring their passion to it every day. And it's a tight-knit community as well, right? We'll see it here, right? Like where all our payroll friends are coming together.
Right.
People really appreciate each other, which I've worked in lots of different industries. I haven't seen it like this.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's I call it like it's a close-knit brother and sisterhood of you know, sort of real payroll geeks in a way, right? Where it's kind of a very special function, but we like to geek out over the same things. How do we get more people, young people, sort of to see that? Wow, you know, maybe this is not the path to become the CEO, but it's a very, you know, worthwhile career path to take.
I think just pure exposure is really kind of what's really needed. You know, when you think of payroll, some people think, okay, well, they just process. And, you know, for people, especially, you know, people who go to college, they're coming out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans. So in their mind, they're like, why would I want to be a payroll rep? But not realizing there's a trajectory into payroll. Like I know people who make seven figures in the payroll space. They're not a CFO. They're not a director of accounting. They're in payroll at the C-suite level because their companies realize payroll needs to be at the C-suite table. So there's you know, just creating that exposure is what's really going to be needed so that people can understand, hey, I can make a solid career out of this. Like downstairs where our payroll friends are now, you know, some of these people have been in the industry. You know, I know a couple people have been there almost 50 years. And it's because they've created a track, you know, and it's giving them obviously a decent living, a lifestyle for them to be able to do what they need to do personally. But it's just, to you said, we're passionate. We love what we do. It's not just I'll get them paid when I think about it. Or like we're real, like when we hear about the regs, we're getting on the phones. Hey, can you understand this Wisconsin reg that just came out? Because like you said, we're a tight-knit community. And I think just exposing our community to knowing that there's an opportunity for them to make to have passion and purpose behind what they do and to have a decent living for it. So I really think the sole answer here is just exposing it. We know as the group that's here, as we decided to come into Vegas and be a part of today's Congress, but it's like, we need more people to understand and know that. And so maybe that starts at the high school level. Maybe we work with trying to, I don't know if it's an actual like formalized program that we need to create, but something to where people can see, hey, because, you know, you don't have to necessarily get degreed to be in payroll. So let's start at the high school level. And there's a lot of high schoolers who are just like, college isn't for me. And that's cool. We can still make a really decent living and a passion and a purposeful job. And so I think that's the answer.
Maybe something to discuss with the APA leadership and community
Absolutely.
here, right? Because as I'm thinking, as we're talking about this, if you think about career fairs and exposing young people to different career choices, typically at the career fairs, you're probably not going to have a payroll person, right?
Right.
You might have, I don't know, someone who works in sales or in marketing, trying to sell them on, hey, here's a job in my company, and company X, Y, and Z. But it might be an angle, right, to have sort of the association actually be more, and maybe they are. I have to admit I don't know that much in terms of what they're doing to kind of foster education and at the high school and college level. But I think, to your point, that could be a very, very interesting undertaking. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talk about sort of building your profile, building pressure. You obviously built a very active and very visible profile for yourself. And you mentioned you're through and through an extrovert, I think you said.
Yes.
I'm curious, for people that are listening that maybe are not as extrovert and haven't thought about themselves as sort of, putting themselves out there, are there any learnings, pieces of advice for people that maybe say, yeah, I know a lot and maybe I do want to be more active or build up my profile a bit more in the community? Anything that you would recommend that they should do or maybe shouldn't do in order to put themselves out there?
Absolutely. Like I said, I get the advantage or the angle of being extroverted, so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people in our space are pretty introverted. It's like, let me stay in my hole and process payroll and be good. But like you said, they've got the knowledge, and so it's just knowing. And that's the one thing I think that made it still surreal for me. Like people, like still running into people who are just like, I met you on social media, you answered my question 2 years ago. And I'm like, it's still surreal to me. Like, wow, like I'm excited and I definitely know about my following, but just the fact of knowing that people truly have found me, known me, and have, appreciated what I've done.
And it's amazing these days. You get reach all around the world, right?
Absolutely.
Someone that you've never met in person,
right,
who sits somewhere, halfway around the world.
Correct.
Suddenly sees your, post and your insights.
Right. So, I just challenge the people who have that knowledge. What I did was purely, there's like a Facebook group and there's some LinkedIn groups where people ask questions. And if you know the answer to the question, just answer it. And that's really how I built my following, is just responding to answer questions that I knew the answers to. And, just had people have an appreciation for it because we're so tight knit. We're all, we want the right answer, because of course, when it comes to it, you want a trusted voice to say, okay, I need this to be right because there's 1,000 employees that rely on me and depending on it. And so, I just encourage the people who are looking to do something similar, in the payroll space. There's so many different tracks you can take. There's payroll education. Maybe you like teaching about courses. You can do on-demand courses, and, training people even at the most basic level to say, hey, here's your paycheck. If you make $16 an hour and work this many hours, this is what your gross payroll would be. It seems so elementary to us because we're in that space and we do it all day long, but I know people who have been in the workforce 40 and 50 years who they know taxes come out of their check, but don't realize there's actual calculations that go behind it. And you can make sure that they're right. And so just creating more exposure and creating, take the same passion that you have on your day-to-day job and just kind of broaden your horizon, educate your family. If you have an uncle that has a situation with maybe a tax levy or a garnishment, just explain to them, okay, this is how your company came up with this number and this is why this amount's coming out. If you start with the building blocks and start at a small level, your exposure will just organically grow because people will say, oh, he knows what he's talking about. There were people who I met earlier today for the first time in person. They were just like, oh, I'm so glad to meet you. And I know if you say that that's the answer, then I know it's got to be right. And while that's a lot of pressure to take, it feels, welcoming, because that's kind of why we're in the business, the industry that we're in, is because we want things to be right, because we want people to be paid and to have and continue their lifestyle.
Yeah. And like you said, I think there's this this whole mindset of helping each other, which is fantastic. Now we're here at the conference. I'm curious, anything that you're particularly looking for beyond obviously meeting and mingling and meeting old and new friends, but any kind of future developments that you're looking to explore, technology, new solutions, new trends. What are you kind of
Sure.
seeing and looking for,
Right.
and where are things going?
Absolutely. Well, of course, the big thing right now is earned wage access, early access to pay, and just, understanding the ramifications, the legalities behind that. And so I know that's a pretty hot topic right now. That's shifting the job. That's beyond payroll. That's,
Right.
hey, I had a flat tire. I don't get paid till Friday. Today's Tuesday. It's like, what does that look like?
Right.
And right now, just like with anything that's kind of newish, it's still, you've got the one side is just like, yeah, let's do it. And the other side's like, that's never going to work. This is crazy, and things of that nature. And so just seeing, what technology is out there, not just from a platform perspective, but just, how can we better payroll so that people truly understand it? Because like I said, most people know they get a paycheck, but they don't know what really goes behind that. And so, I'm definitely interested to hear more about, of course, early wage access. There's been a lot of tax reconciliation things coming up recently because of the COVID credits and all of that took place, that now the IRS is catching up and sending those notices and things of that nature. And so just the education behind that and how to mull through making sure that your company's still in a good place and that everything is reconciled. And like you said, of course, the networking, we're, just being able to meet people. But I'm just excited and interested to see what's next for payroll. Where I pride myself on advocating for payrolls that people know, hey, payroll's not to be messed with. Like, take care of your payroll people, and I promise they'll take care of you. But I'm interested to see, as a collective unit in our industry, what is the next step? What does 10 years look like in payroll?
Yeah, good. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting new ideas and learnings coming out of the next few days sessions.
Most definitely.
Well. Good. So shifting gears a little bit,
Okay.
what we like to do at the end of our episodes is something that we call the lightning round.
Okay.
So how it works is I'll ask you a series of questions, and you just answer them quickly, whatever comes to mind first. Okay. All right. There's no right or wrong, so no worries. So first question is, when you were young, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a judge. And then my mom told me, in order to be a judge, you had to be a lawyer first.
Okay.
I wasn't really excited about being the lawyer. So, but yeah, I wanted to be a judge.
Cool. Next question. What are the essential qualities of a good payroll professional?
Essential qualities, you got to have solid time management. You've got to be able to handle stress, and you've got to have empathy. I think empathy is huge in our industry because we deal with so much. It's so easy to be like, okay, we do this all the time, but you got to remember the employee, this might be their first time dealing with this situation. And so just being empathetic is
very
huge
important. Very
Absolutely.
important. Yeah, it's still, with all the technology, it's still a very person-to-person type of role.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And talking about that person-to-person, what gives you as a person most satisfaction in being a payroll professional?
Educating the person and knowing that, I didn't just fix your issue. You now understand the education, the knowledge, the legalities behind the situation so that they can say, okay, you know what? Not only did he fix it, but now I know why this happened or how to handle this in the future.
Gives them more satisfaction
Absolutely.
themselves. Okay. And last question, if you hadn't become a payroll professional, what else would you be doing?
That's a very good question. I went to school and got my HR management degree. And so I was prepared to go on the track of becoming like a director of HR, vice president of HR, which of course is still somewhat tied into payroll.
Absolutely,
but,
yeah.
So I was prepared to go the human resources route.
Right. Okay. Very good. Cool. Well, listen, that's it for today's episode. Do you have any last final shout outs, any plugs you want to give to people?
Sure. You can, of course, I'm That Payroll Guy. You can follow me on all socials. I'm on LinkedIn, I've even gone into the TikTok and the Instagram space. So
Very progressive.
I'm there too. So I'm trying to make things work. I'm always advocating for all things payroll. Feel free to reach out to me. Of course, the American Payroll Association. They're such an amazing company, an amazing industry, pushing us forward, making sure that we're good. And that's pretty much it. So all things payroll for me, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep it real. Payroll.
Absolutely.
Passion for payroll is important.
Correct.
Gerard, it was great having you on the show. Thank you for your time. Let's see what the next few days bring here in Vegas and the next few years for the payroll profession. Thank you everyone for watching today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to find out more, if you want to watch up other episodes, you can find them, as I said, on YouTube, LinkedIn, as well as all the major podcast websites. So please tune in, subscribe, like our content. That way we can make sure more people get a chance to enjoy it. And thank you so much for watching, and talk to you again soon.